Have you noticed that discipline never fails in the first days, but it always collapses later? No matter the method, the planner, or the promise, you always reach a point where everything falls apart. And it's not bad luck. It's not weakness. It's the hidden habits you're still feeding, the ones quietly winning the battle before you even start. These habits are subtle, almost invisible, but they are strong enough to erase your progress, destroy your consistency, and convince you that you were never capable in the first place. That's why every time you start again, the story ends the same way. You push hard, you resist for a while, and then you break. Today, we are not here to add more rules to your life. We are here to expose and cut the very habits that have been destroying you in secret. Because until you break them, every attempt at discipline will collapse like a castle made of sand, no matter how determined you are. Discipline doesn't collapse in a single dramatic moment. It erodes in silence. It erodes in the small lies you tell yourself when nobody else is around. You don't announce to the world, "Today I'll break my discipline." Instead, it happens in whispers you've repeated so often that they sound like truth. Just this once won't hurt. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break today. These little sentences feel harmless, but they're the cracks that bring down the entire wall of discipline. Think about your mornings. The alarm rings. You've promised yourself you'll wake up early, but your hand moves faster than your mind. You hit snooze. You say it's just 10 more minutes. You believe you'll make up for it later in the day. But those 10 minutes are not just about sleep. They are about integrity. In that moment, you trained yourself to choose comfort over commitment. And tomorrow, the decision will be even easier. Or consider your health. You've sworn you'll eat better, avoid junk food, take care of your body. Then someone offers you a slice of cake, and you hear yourself think, "It's only one slice. I'll be good tomorrow." The cake itself isn't the problem. The problem is that you taught your brain to break a promise. And once you've done it once, it becomes easier to do it again and again until discipline is no longer even part of the conversation. This is how self-deception sabotages you, not with massive failures, but with small betrayals of your own word. And every time you betray yourself, something inside you changes. You start to believe you cannot be trusted. You stop respecting your own decisions. And without self-respect, discipline cannot exist. Stephen Covey often emphasized that true discipline begins with character. Character is not built in public moments of glory. It is built in private moments of choice. It's whether you keep your word to yourself when no one is watching. Because if you cannot honor the promises you make in secret, why would your brain take you seriously when the stakes are higher? Here's the painful truth. The first person you ever lie to is yourself. And those lies create a pattern. You promise to study, but you scroll through social media instead. You promise to go to the gym, but you say you'll go tomorrow. You promise to spend time with your family, but you convince yourself you're too tired. Every time you say one thing and do another, your subconscious is taking notes. It's learning, and it's building a belief about who you are. Soon, your identity starts to shift. Instead of seeing yourself as disciplined, consistent, and trustworthy, you quietly start to believe you are the kind of person who quits. And that belief becomes prophecy. Because once you accept it, discipline becomes almost impossible. You're no longer fighting against laziness. You're fighting against the story you've told yourself about who you are. But self-deception doesn't just weaken discipline. It destroys momentum. Imagine pushing a heavy boulder up a hill. Every act of discipline is a push forward. But every time you tell yourself a lie, you let go. The boulder rolls backward, and you lose more than progress. You lose belief. This is why so many people feel stuck in endless cycles of starting and stopping. It's not that they lack strategies or motivation. It's that the weight of broken promises pulls them back to the same place, over and over again. And the saddest part? You almost never notice it happening in real time. You think it's small. You think it's temporary. But one skipped morning turns into a week. One excuse at the gym turns into a month. One moment of "I'll start tomorrow" turns into another year of waiting. That's the hidden cost of self-deception. It steals your time without asking permission. Here's what makes it even more dangerous. When you break promises to yourself often enough, your mind begins to protect you from the pain by lowering your standards. It convinces you that your goals weren't that important anyway. It tells you discipline is overrated, that life should be about balance, that maybe you're just not the kind of person who can live with structure. But that's not truth. That's your brain defending you from the shame of repeated self-betrayal. And if you believe that story, you'll never break free. This is why facing self-deception is non-negotiable. Until you stop lying to yourself, no system, no planner, no new routine will save you. Discipline isn't about adding more rules. It's about finally honoring the ones you already know. It's about looking yourself in the eye and saying, no more lies, no more excuses, no more breaking my own trust. And here's the shift you need to make. Instead of asking, how do I get more disciplined? Start asking, how do I stop lying to myself? Because the truth is, your discipline is not built in the gym or the office or the classroom. It's built in the quiet conversations you have with yourself, in those small moments where you decide if your word is worth keeping. Self-deception is the first enemy of discipline, but it's not the only one. Because even if you stop lying to yourself, there's another habit that slips in silently, hijacks your decisions, and controls your day without you realizing. And until you face this one, discipline will always feel like running uphill with no end in sight. If self-deception is the first invisible enemy of discipline, reactivity is the second. And it's just as dangerous because it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like life. From the moment you wake up, the world demands your attention. Notifications flash, emails pile up, people call your name, problems wait at your door. And without noticing, you spend your entire day reacting, not leading. Reactivity is when your phone decides your morning, when someone else's urgency rewrites your priorities, when circumstances control your state of mind. It feels normal because everyone lives this way. But normal is exactly the problem. Because discipline cannot survive in an environment where you are constantly reacting to the loudest voice or the nearest distraction. Think about your mornings again. The alarm goes off. Before your feet touch the floor, you grab your phone. A message appears. An email subject pulls you in. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's gossip. Either way, within minutes, your attention has been hijacked. You had intentions for the morning. Exercise, reading, planning your day, but now you're already consumed by someone else's agenda. That is reactivity at its core, giving away the steering wheel of your life before you've even decided where you're going. The cost is not just time, it's identity. When you live reactively, you are not deciding who you are, you're letting the outside world decide for you. Your mood depends on the news you read. Your energy depends on who texts you. Your focus depends on whether distractions show up. And once discipline depends on circumstances, it dies. Because circumstances never stop shifting. Stephen Covey often spoke about the power of proactivity, the idea that your greatest freedom is the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. But most people never reach that space because they don't slow down enough to recognize it. Instead, they bounce like a pinball from one event to the next, always moving but never choosing. And a life without conscious choice cannot sustain discipline. Picture this. You sit down to work on an important project. 10 minutes later, a notification lights up your screen. You glance at it. It's nothing urgent, but now your focus is gone. You go back to work, but the thread is broken. Discipline is not just about showing up, it's about staying present. And every interruption you accept tells your brain that it's okay to abandon focus. Slowly, you train yourself to live in fragments. And fragments never build discipline. Reactivity doesn't just show up in distractions, it also shows up in emotions. Someone criticizes you, and your energy collapses. Someone praises you, and suddenly you're motivated again. You feel unstoppable on good days and broken on bad ones. But discipline cannot depend on feelings, because feelings are weather. They change without warning. And if your consistency rises and falls with every shift in mood, you'll never create the stability discipline requires. Ask yourself, how many times have you abandoned your plan for the day because of how you felt in the morning? How many workouts were skipped not because they were impossible, but because your mood whispered, not today? How many goals stayed unfinished because you reacted to discouragement instead of acting on commitment? Reactivity is dangerous because it feels justified. You tell yourself, I had to answer that email. I had to deal with that message. I had to take that call. But did you? Or did you surrender your priorities the moment they face competition? That's the difference between discipline and reactivity. Discipline protects what matters most, while reactivity hands it away to whatever shouts the loudest. Here's the truth. Until you break the habit of reactivity, you will always be a prisoner of the urgent. And the urgent is never the same as the important. The urgent asks for your attention right now. The important builds the life you want tomorrow. Discipline is the art of choosing the important over the urgent over and over again. But that choice only exists when you stop reacting long enough to make it. So how do you break free from reactivity? It begins with the first hour of your day. If you give it away, the rest of the day will be stolen too. That's why the disciplined protect their mornings like treasure. They don't start in chaos. They start with intention. Whether it's exercise, reading, prayer, or planning, they do something proactive before the world invades. That first act tells the mind, I lead, I don't follow. And that mindset carries into every decision that follows. But even beyond mornings, breaking reactivity means learning to pause, to catch yourself before answering every notification, to breathe before reacting to every emotion, to ask, is this urgent or is this just loud? That pause is where discipline is born. It's where you reclaim the steering wheel from a world that never stops pulling. And make no mistake, if you don't claim it, someone else will. There's always a boss, a friend, a crisis, or a distraction waiting to decide your day for you. And the more you allow it, the less discipline you'll ever have. Because discipline is not about control over everything. It's about control over yourself. Reactivity is a thief. It steals your focus, your time, your energy, and your power to choose. And unless you break the habit, you will always live at the mercy of the next distraction, the next problem, the next mood. That is not discipline. That is survival. But there is another habit, one that digs even deeper than reactivity. It doesn't just steal your time, it rewires your brain. It convinces you to exchange long-term success for short-term pleasure every single day. And until you cut this one out, discipline will never last. Discipline requires endurance, but instant gratification trains you for surrender. At its core, discipline is about holding the vision of what you want most, even when it costs you what you want now. But our culture is built on shortcuts. Everywhere you look, someone is offering you faster results, easier solutions, immediate pleasure. And the more you accept those offers, the weaker your capacity for discipline becomes. Think about how quickly we've been conditioned to demand speed. 2-day shipping feels slow now. Streaming services cut the wait for the next episode. Social media delivers endless dopamine hits with a single swipe. Every area of life has been designed to reward your impulses instantly. And every time you give in, your brain rewires itself to expect more. The more you feed the hunger for now, the harder it becomes to endure later. This is why discipline feels unbearable for so many people. It's not that they're incapable of effort. It's that their minds have been trained for shortcuts, not for patience. When you're used to rewards in seconds, the thought of working for months or years feels impossible. And yet, that's exactly what every meaningful goal requires. Building strength, building wealth, building character, none of it happens overnight. It happens in the slow, invisible grind. And instant gratification is designed to make you quit before you even reach the halfway point. Picture this. You decide to work out. You're motivated, you go to the gym, you sweat, you push. At the end of the session, you look in the mirror and see nothing different. No six-pack, no transformation, just the same reflection you've always known. In that moment, the brain whispers, see, it didn't work. Why suffer when you can go home and relax? That's the voice of instant gratification, the demand for visible results right now. And if you listen, you won't come back tomorrow. Or imagine studying. You open the book, read for an hour, close it. You don't feel smarter. Nothing in your life changed. But open your phone, scroll for 5 minutes, and you feel entertained. One option offers long-term growth. The other offers short-term pleasure. And every time you choose the second, You weaken your tolerance for the first. The problem is not that pleasure is wrong. The problem is that pleasure without patience robs you of progress. And when progress disappears, so does discipline. Because why would you keep doing something that feels like suffering without reward? Here's the truth. Instant gratification is not just a habit. It's a trap. It creates a cycle. You want something now, you give in, you feel good for a moment, and then the emptiness returns. So you chase another quick fix. The cycle repeats until days, months, even years pass. And the bigger goals that required sustained effort never materialize. And then you tell yourself the lie. I guess I wasn't disciplined enough. But it's not about being disciplined. It's about being addicted to the wrong reward system. Covey taught that private victories come before public ones. But private victories don't look glamorous. They look boring. They look invisible. They are the mornings you get up when no one notices, the hours of practice that don't show results yet, the choices that feel small but build strength over time. That's what instant gratification steals from you. It blinds you to the value of invisible progress. And invisible progress is the only kind that ever lasts. When you choose long-term over short-term, you're not just delaying pleasure, you're rewriting your identity. You're telling yourself, I'm the kind of person who can endure. And endurance is the heart of discipline. Because life will test you again and again with opportunities to take the shortcut, to skip the hard work, to quit early. Every test you pass strengthens you. Every test you fail weakens you. And the battlefield is always the same. Will you sacrifice what you want most for what you want now? Think of the times you've quit too early. Maybe you gave up on a business idea because it didn't explode in the first months. Maybe you quit a habit because the payoff wasn't immediate. Maybe you abandoned a relationship because growth took longer than you expected. In each case, the decision wasn't about impossibility, it was about impatience. And impatience kills more dreams than failure ever will. But here's the secret. Once you learn to delay gratification, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like power. Every time you resist the urge to settle for less, you gain strength. Every time you choose the long term, you remind yourself that your future matters more than your comfort. That shift is what separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. So ask yourself, what is the reward system running your life right now? Are you chasing the quick fix, the short hit, the instant pleasure? Or are you training your mind to wait, to endure, to believe in results you cannot see yet? Because one system builds addiction and the other builds destiny. Instant gratification is seductive. It whispers that discipline isn't worth it, that life should be easier, that the payoff should come faster. But it's lying to you. The truth is this. Everything meaningful takes longer than you want. But everything lasting is worth more than you imagine. And the moment you stop chasing the quick win, you finally create the space for real growth. Self-deception weakens discipline. Reactivity distracts it. But instant gratification poisons it from the inside. And until you stop feeding it, you will never taste the strength of true consistency. But there's another force, even subtler than gratification. It doesn't just tempt you to quit. It tricks you into debating whether to act at all. And that habit is the silent killer of every routine, every resolution, every attempt at transformation. Discipline doesn't only collapse because of excuses or distractions. It often collapses in the space between decision and action, in the quiet debates you have with yourself before you move. This is the most deceptive enemy of all, the habit of negotiation. You know the voice. You tell yourself you're going to wake up early tomorrow. But when the alarm rings, another voice rises. Just 5 more minutes. You say you're going to exercise after work. But then the voice appears again. You had a long day. Rest now, you can go tomorrow. You plan to save money. But the voice whispers, you deserve this one thing. Just this once. It feels like you're reasoning. It feels like balance. But in reality, every negotiation is a battle against your own decision. And the more you debate with yourself, the more power that voice gains. Covey emphasized the importance of making certain decisions only once. Decide your principles, your values, your non-negotiables, then never revisit them. Because if every choice is open to debate, discipline becomes impossible. Imagine trying to rebuild willpower every single day, every single action. You wouldn't last a week. That's why people burn out. Not because the actions are impossible, but because the negotiations are endless. Think of how exhausting it is. Every morning, debating whether to wake up. Every workout, debating whether to go. Every meal, debating whether to eat healthy. It's not the action that drains you. It's the constant dialogue. And when you live this way, your discipline dies not from lack of effort, but from decision fatigue. Have you noticed how much easier it is to follow through when something is truly non-negotiable? If your child needs help, you don't debate. If you have to breathe, you don't debate. That's the level discipline demands. Not should I or shouldn't I, but this is simply who I am. The tragedy is that most people never reach that state because they've trained themselves to always leave room for argument. They act like lawyers inside their own minds, building cases for and against their own growth. And here's the painful truth. When you negotiate with yourself, you almost always lose. Because the voice of comfort is persuasive. It knows exactly what to say to make you delay, to make you compromise, to make you surrender. And every time you surrender, your brain learns the same lesson. My decisions are not final. My commitments are flexible. That is the death of discipline. Because discipline requires certainty. Without certainty, every step is vulnerable to collapse. Think about a soldier on a battlefield. If they debated every order, they'd be dead in minutes. Discipline is about creating that same clarity in your own life. Once the decision is made, action follows, without question. So how do you break this habit of negotiation? It starts by shrinking the gap between decision and action. The longer you leave space, the louder the voice becomes. If you say you'll get up and run, don't wait 10 minutes scrolling your phone. Stand up, move, act before the debate begins. The faster you act, the weaker that inner negotiator becomes. Another way is to define your non-negotiables in advance. Don't decide in the moment whether you'll work out. Decide once that you are the kind of person who trains every day. Don't decide each morning whether you'll read. Decide once that it's part of who you are. Once it's identity, it's no longer a daily debate. It's simply truth. This is the deeper secret of discipline. It's not about making 1,000 decisions. It's about making a few decisions with such clarity that they eliminate 1,000 future debates. Every time you negotiate, you waste energy. Every time you act without negotiation, you conserve it. That's why disciplined people often seem tireless. It's not that they have more willpower, it's that they waste less of it in argument. But here's the danger. Once you allow one negotiation, you invite more. I'll start tomorrow. I'll do half today and catch up later. I'll take a break and come back stronger. Each negotiation feels small, but collectively they form a pattern of hesitation. And hesitation kills momentum. Momentum is fragile. It can take weeks to build and only one compromise to destroy. You've probably felt this. You were consistent for days, maybe weeks. Then one day you allowed a debate. You skipped once. The next day it felt easier to skip again. Soon, what was once a rhythm has turned into a memory. That's how the negotiator works. It doesn't destroy you in one blow. It erodes you until you collapse. This is why the most powerful people don't waste time in debates with themselves. They don't argue with their alarm clock. They don't question whether to act. They simply follow through. Because they've learned that once you open the door to negotiation, it's already too late. The habit of negotiation is dangerous because it disguises itself as rationality. It makes you feel smart, balanced, thoughtful. But in reality, it's a delay tactic. It's comfort dressed as wisdom. And once you recognize it for what it is, you can finally cut it out of your life. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about refusing to let the voice of comfort sit at the negotiation table. Once you remove that seat, your choices become simpler. Your energy returns. Your word regains its power. Self-deception breaks your integrity. Reactivity steals your control. Instant gratification rewires your brain. But negotiation is the silent killer because it convinces you that quitting is reasonable. And until you stop debating with yourself, discipline will always remain just out of reach. And yet, there is an even deeper enemy, one that doesn't just attack your actions, but your very identity. Because if you don't know who you are, every habit, every discipline, every promise will eventually crumble. At the root of discipline lies something deeper than habits, routines, or even willpower. It is identity. Without a clear sense of who you are, discipline will always feel like a costume you put on temporarily, not the skin you live in permanently. And the moment discipline feels like a costume, it will eventually be removed. Most people approach discipline as behavior. They say, I'll try to wake up early. I'll try to eat better. I'll try to be more consistent. But here's the truth. Behavior follows identity. If deep down you don't see yourself as a disciplined person, every action you take will feel like pretending. And pretending doesn't last. Think about the smoker who quits for a few weeks, but still identifies as a smoker trying to quit. Every craving feels like part of who they are, so eventually the old behavior wins. Now compare that to the person who says, I don't smoke anymore. That's not who I am. Same external challenge, different identity. The first fights every day. The second doesn't need to fight because their actions flow naturally from who they believe they are. Discipline works the same way. If your identity is unclear, you'll spend your life negotiating every action, questioning every choice, and doubting every effort. But once your identity is set, discipline stops being a battle, it becomes expression. Ask yourself, who are you right now beneath the routines? When you describe yourself, what comes out? Do you see yourself as inconsistent, easily distracted, undisciplined? If so, it doesn't matter how many new rules you add. You will always return to that identity. Because your subconscious always fights to remain consistent with the story it believes about you. That's why so many people feel stuck. They chase new habits. They start new routines. They buy new planners and programs. But none of it lasts because deep down they are still carrying an old identity. They see themselves as lazy, as failures, as the kind of person who always quits. And the brain, in its desire for consistency, pulls their actions back in line with that belief. Stephen Covey often highlighted that private victories begin in alignment with principles. What he meant was this: until your inner world matches the discipline you're trying to build, your outer actions will collapse under pressure. You cannot act consistently against the story you believe about yourself. Consider this. When you say, I'm trying to be disciplined, you've already lost. The word trying reveals that you don't fully believe it yet. Discipline built on effort alone burns out. But discipline built on identity sustains. Because when something is part of who you are, it doesn't require endless motivation. It simply happens. Think of someone who truly identifies as an athlete. They don't negotiate about training. It's part of their life. Or a musician. They don't need reminders to practice. They see themselves as someone who creates music. It's who they are. That's the power of identity. It removes negotiation. It simplifies choice. It makes consistency natural. So, what identity are you living from right now? Is it the identity of your past failures? The identity shaped by excuses, by broken promises, by doubt? Or is it the identity of the person you want to become? The one who follows through, who keeps promises, who values integrity above comfort. Here's the shift. Discipline becomes possible when you stop asking, what do I need to do? And start asking, who do I need to be? Because once you answer the second question, the first one becomes automatic. Your actions will align with your identity. But here's the danger. When your identity is undefined, the world will define it for you. Your environment, your friends, your failures, your emotions, they will all take turns telling you who you are. And those labels, discipline will never stick. Because you'll be living someone else's story, not your own. You need to write your own definition. You need to decide, I am disciplined. I am consistent. I am the kind of person who keeps my word. At first, it may feel like a stretch, but the more you repeat it and prove it with small actions, the faster it becomes reality. Discipline is not built in giant leaps. It's built in micro acts of alignment between who you say you are and what you actually do. The truth is this: discipline without identity is like building a house on sand. No matter how beautiful it looks, the moment pressure comes, it collapses. But discipline rooted in identity is unshakable. Because when you know who you are, you no longer argue with yourself. You simply act in accordance with your truth. So the question is not whether you can be disciplined. The real question is, will you choose the identity of someone who lives with discipline or the identity of someone who only dreams about it? Because until you answer that, your efforts will always crumble under the weight of doubt. But identity alone is not enough. Even if you know who you are, there's another force powerful enough to weaken your discipline, the very environment you place yourself in. And unless you confront that, identity will remain fragile under the constant pressure of influence. Even the strongest identity can be broken if it is placed in the wrong environment. You can decide who you are, you can build routines, you can even commit deeply to discipline. But if you surround yourself with constant temptation, toxic influences, and structures that pull you backward, your discipline will erode no matter how strong your will. Think about it. You don't put a recovering alcoholic in a bar and expect them to thrive. You don't put someone trying to lose weight in a kitchen overflowing with junk food and expect them to succeed. Yet most people live their daily lives in environments designed to make them fail, and then they blame themselves when they break. The truth is, your environment is stronger than your intentions. You can promise yourself that you'll stay focused, but if your phone is buzzing every minute, if the television is always on, if the people around you dismiss your efforts, then discipline becomes a constant uphill battle. It's not that you're weak. It's that you're fighting against a current designed to sweep you away. Take a look at your own surroundings. What's on your desk right now? Is it clear, organized, inviting you to focus? Or is it cluttered, filled with distractions? Look at your kitchen. Does it support your goals for health, or does it tempt you into compromise? Look at the people you spend the most time with. Do they challenge you to rise, or do they pull you back to old versions of yourself? The environment doesn't just influence your choices, it shapes them before you even notice. Studies have shown that much of human behavior is automatic, triggered by cues in your surroundings. If the candy is on the counter, you'll reach for it. If the phone is in your hand, you'll scroll. If the television is glowing in the background, you'll watch. Discipline becomes nearly impossible when every cue around you screams for distraction. That's why the disciplined don't just change themselves, they change their environments. They remove triggers that weaken them. They add cues that strengthen them. They know that willpower is limited, but environment is constant. And if you align your environment with your goals, you no longer have to fight every moment. The choice is made for you. Think of an athlete. Their home is not filled with junk food. Their schedule is not filled with meaningless noise. Their friends are not the ones telling them to skip training. Everything around them reinforces who they've chosen to be. That's not luck, it's design. So ask yourself, what have you designed? If your space is full of clutter, if your routines are surrounded by temptation, if your circle of influence normalizes mediocrity, then you've set yourself up to fail before the day even begins. And until you change that, discipline will always feel like swimming against the current. Here's the key. Discipline thrives in frictionless environments. That means creating conditions where the right choice is easy and the wrong choice is difficult. Want to wake up early? Put your phone across the room so you have to get up to turn off the alarm. Want to eat healthier? Remove the junk food from your house so the choice doesn't exist. Want to stay focused? Block the apps, clear your desk, and create a space that breathes clarity. But environment is not just physical, it's also relational. The people around you are part of your environment. Their attitudes, habits, and beliefs will rub off on you whether you realize it or not. If you surround yourself with people who live without discipline, their example will weaken yours. You'll hear them justify, excuse, delay, and those justifications will start sounding like your own. On the other hand, when you surround yourself with people who demand more from life, your standard rises automatically. You don't have to be pushed, you feel pulled upward by the weight of their example. That's why one of the most powerful decisions you'll ever make for your discipline is choosing the right company. Because no matter how strong you are, if you walk with the undisciplined long enough, you'll eventually match their pace. Stephen Covey highlighted that we are deeply shaped by the systems we participate in. If the system around you rewards laziness, you will struggle to live with discipline. But if the system rewards consistency, focus, and effort, you'll find discipline easier than you imagined. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. The wise don't just fight temptation, they remove it. They don't just resist distraction. They redesign their lives so distractions have no foothold. So look again at your world. What's in it that weakens you? What voices, what spaces, what patterns are making discipline harder than it has to be? Until you change that, you'll always feel like you're failing. Not because you lack strength, but because you've built your life on the wrong foundation. The truth is, discipline doesn't grow in toxic soil. You can plant the seed, but if the ground is polluted, it won't last. To protect your discipline, you must protect your environment. And when you do, when you clear the distractions, strengthen the cues, and surround yourself with people who live with intention, you'll feel something shift. Discipline will no longer feel like a fight. It will feel natural, because your environment will be carrying you forward instead of dragging you back. But there's one more force we must face. It's not about your surroundings. It's not even about the world outside. It's about the decision to finally cut ties with the old patterns that have been chaining you to the past. And without that final cut, discipline will never be more than a temporary illusion. There comes a moment when no amount of new routines, new planners, or new techniques will save you. A moment when discipline is no longer about what you add, but what you cut. Because until you remove the chains that keep pulling you back, you'll keep rebuilding the same prison, stronger walls, maybe, but the same prison nonetheless. That's the essence of the final cut. It's the decision to stop living half in and half out, to stop carrying the old habits that sabotage every attempt at growth. It's the refusal to negotiate with lies, to live reactive to noise, to surrender to quick pleasures, to endlessly debate with yourself, to hide behind a weak identity, or to remain in environments that poison you. The final cut is ruthless. It doesn't wait until you feel ready. It doesn't negotiate with comfort. It doesn't ask for permission from anyone. It simply says, "This is no longer who I am." And then it proves it with action. Most people never make this cut. They spend years trying to layer new habits on top of old ones, hoping that progress will outweigh sabotage. But it doesn't. Because no matter how much you build, if you don't cut what destroys you, discipline will crumble every single time. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with holes in the bottom. You can pour in as much water as you want, but until you seal the leaks, the bucket will never stay full. That's how discipline works. You can add systems, strategies, routines, but until you remove the holes, nothing will hold. The leaks will always drain your progress. And here's the truth. The cut is painful. It requires sacrifice. It means letting go of comfort, of excuses, of people who don't rise with you, of environments that make you weak. It means killing the old version of yourself, the one who broke promises, chased quick fixes, lived in reaction, negotiated away every chance at greatness. And that's not easy, because that version is familiar. That version feels safe. But safe is what kept you stuck. Familiar is what kept you weak. And if you want to live with real discipline, you cannot carry both versions. You can't build the new life while protecting the old one. One has to die for the other to live. This is the moment where you decide, am I willing to make the cut? Am I willing to stop dragging these habits behind me like chains? Because discipline is not a mystery. It is not reserved for the gifted. It is simply the result of saying no, again and again, to the things that destroy you. And the most powerful thing about this decision is that once it's made, life gets lighter. You don't have to fight every day with the same weight. You don't have to keep proving yourself over and over. You simply live in alignment with who you've chosen to be. The noise fades. The negotiations disappear. And what's left is clarity. This is the freedom of discipline. The paradox that by cutting away, you gain more than you ever lost. You lose the illusion of comfort, and you gain real strength. You lose the false identity, and you gain authenticity. You lose the temporary highs, and you gain lasting growth. So let me ask you directly, what habits are you still protecting that are killing your discipline? What excuses, what patterns, what environments are you still allowing to poison you? And when will you decide that enough is enough? Because until you cut them out, you're not building discipline, you're building delay. The final cut is not about tomorrow. It's not about someday when life feels easier. It's about right now. It's about proving to yourself, in this moment, that you will no longer betray who you're meant to be. Because every day you delay, the chains grow heavier. And every day you act, they grow weaker. This is your choice. No one else can make it for you. Not your friends, not your family, not your circumstances. Only you. And the moment you choose, everything changes. Because discipline is not found in waiting. It is forged in decisive action. So make the cut. Remove the weight. Kill the old self that held you back. And step into the discipline that has been waiting for you all along. If these words are hitting you right now, don't just let them fade when this video ends. Subscribe today, not for me, but for you. To remind yourself daily that you're done negotiating, done delaying, done protecting the very habits that destroy you. Here, we're building something different. Each new subscriber isn't just a number. It's a quiet promise. This time, I keep my word. And as you step forward, remember this. Discipline is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning. Because once you cut what weakens you, you're finally free to build what strengthens you. And that's where the real transformation begins. So don't stop here. The next video is waiting.